Good morning, y'all. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. This is our first live show of the week, so we've got a lot to get into. Jay Norvell went viral on Monday with some pretty poignant thoughts, I would say, on agents, on the potential pitfalls of the transfer portal. I wrote a column on that, so I would ask you to go check that out if you are a DNVR diehard. About 1,400 words, just kind of given some thoughts on the whole process, why for some it's certainly a benefit, why there are potential people, I would say, that are involved in the process that are not necessarily looking out for the best interest of the players or anything like that. There's just a lot of layers to it. I wrote about it. Go check it all out. I will talk about it a little bit on today's show as well. I'll play some clips from Norvell. We'll talk about the latest news in the Mountain West, a ton happening there. Sounds like UNLV hired Dan Mullen, so they're going back to the SEC there to try and sustain what they had built the last couple years under Barry Odom. That's a really nice hire for UNLV. Surprising to me, to be honest, that they were able to pull that one off. I will get into that at the end. If you're listening on YouTube, sure would appreciate if you'd give us a thumbs up. Good morning to all of you guys. I guess we'll just kind of jump right into it here. Like I said, we're going to talk about the potential pitfalls of the portal, just how chaotic this time of year is for the programs. We'll talk about CSU football adding a GM, Alex Collins, all that fun stuff. I'm going to talk about what Norvell had to say about the defensive coordinator, about what he wants in his next defensive coordinator, I suppose I should say. I kind of asked him, what characteristics are you looking for? He did not hold back. I will play that clip. If you missed it, yesterday, the conference slate was announced for 2025. CSU football's conference opponents we now know. We do not yet know the dates for the Mountain West games. I posted the press release, which had the non-conference dates with dates, and then below it had the home games listed, and then the road games in the league slate. I confused a lot of people. That was my bad. They thought that we just played every home league game, then every road league game, and that's how the season went. That was, again, my bad. That was a little bit confusing. But if you missed it, August 30th, the Rams will open up at Washington. They will host Northern Colorado on September 6th. Wouldn't surprise me if that ends up being Ag Day. September 13th is to be announced. A lot of people have asked, could that potentially be a matchup with the Buffs? Not without both teams getting out of games they already have contracted. You can't play 13 matchups unless you play a road game in Hawaii. CSU will host Hawaii, but they won't be making that trip. So they've got 12 games ready to go there. Would assume that it'll be a bye week, but it could potentially be a league game because of the service academy matchups and how they kind of throw off the calendar. There always end up being a couple of September conference games in the Mountain West. So we'll see. I would guess it'll be a bye, but it could be a league game. September 20th, UTSA has come into town. It's been a solid program the last couple of years. And then September 27th, the Rams will host Washington State, kind of doing the Cougars a favor there. Washington State and Oregon State had some struggles filling out their schedule. They're going to play a home and home next year, which is both cool, but also emblematic of the wonky situation they're in schedule-wise. I already gave thoughts on that a month or two ago when that game got announced, but I think it makes a lot of sense to help your future conference mate out, even though that could be potentially a pretty tricky game. We'll see what happens with the Washington State roster there. I did see that they added, or that they offered, Newer Gatkuth, so maybe a chance that we end up playing a former Ram in that game. Whether or not they'll be able to hang on to Mateer at quarterback is definitely going to be a big factor with how competitive that game is. Both those Washington matchups, I think, will be kind of interesting to see. probably would have preferred to get Washington this year. They definitely were pretty down. I think Fish is a good coach and he's going to get that thing rolling eventually. Hopefully it's after week 1. The conference games, like I said, we don't know the dates yet, but they'll be playing Air Force, Fresno State, Hawaii, and UNLV at home. On the road, they'll be playing Boise State, New Mexico, Wyoming, and San Diego State. So they'll get some opponents that they did not face this year in San Diego State, Boise State, and UNLV. You won't play Utah State, so a little bit of a break in that matchup. Won't play like San Jose State, some of those teams they faced a couple of times in recent years. Looking at the schedule overall, and this is just my initial reaction, there's so much that's going to happen between then and now. We'll have multiple portal windows. We'll have so much player movement. There could be coaching changes. There's a lot that's going to happen. So at this point, making any type of preseason predictions is more or less pointless, but it's a little bit fun to do. You know, I think with 7 home games again and looking at the schedule, you're going to have a first-year coach at UNLV, a first-year coach at Fresno State, first-year coach at New Mexico. San Diego State sounds like could have some portal issues. Danny O'Neal, their freshman quarterback, is entering the portal. They lost Lewis Brown. Pretty manageable, I would say. A couple of trap games in there for sure. UTSA worries me. That's a deceptively tough home game. I think Air Force will be better. They certainly closed the season strong, but at least you get that one at home. CSU has been really good at home over the last year and a half, basically going back to that Boise State game under Norvell in 2023. But I think it makes a lot of sense that they had to play UNLV and Boise after missing them both this year. Kind of feels fitting in the final year of the Mountain West that you're playing a lot of these classic teams. You know, the Mountain West I grew up with as a kid, you know, I associate San Diego State, New Mexico, UNLV, even Hawaii, who wasn't in the league back then, but they were in the WAC and Fresno and some of these other schools. Just like a lot of classic conference matchups. Feels pretty fitting. More so, I would say, than, you know, playing Nevada or San Jose State or some of those other teams that ended up coming into the league later. I don't know why. They just have never moved the needle quite as much for me. But yeah, that's the 2025 home slate. Bummer they don't have a Rocky Mountain Showdown. Also kind of nice because I'm a little bit over the drama in that matchup these last couple years. Could use a little bit of a break. We got a question here in the Toyota chat. Regarding Air Force, do we anticipate a defense that stuffs the run more consistently in the future? Do you mean a CSU? We'll see. They've actually defended the option in Air Force's offense pretty well these last couple years, I would say. They were right in the middle of the pack in terms of run defense this year in the league. Pass defense too, which is funny why they ended up with the top scoring defense, because you look at all the numbers individually and it's kind of like right there in the middle. They just didn't end up giving up a ton of points. I'll be interested to see what happens there with the defensive coordinator, and that's what we're going to kind of get into here next. So that's a good way to segue it. I do real quick though, I want to shout out our partners who make all of this possible. And of course, we got to start with our friends over at Coors Light. Guys, between work, between everything that life throws your way, it gets chaotic. I'm moving this weekend again, so that's going to be a whole process. Exciting, but stressful, nevertheless. And I've been feeling it this week. I've been not sleeping great. I've been in a kind of an agitated mood just in general, and I don't want to be that guy. So I'm constantly trying to work on it. You know, I'm trying to take my deep breaths, go outside, get a little bit of sunshine now and then, because I want to be in a chill state of mind. Once I'm kicking back, once I've got the Nuggets on, the Avs on, then I might crack open an ice cold Coors Light. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. When you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open a Coors Light. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill and choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate Response Week, Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I also want to talk to you guys about Game Time. Game Time is focused on together this holiday season. Some of my favorite memories growing up be like winter break, elementary school. It's bowl season. The NFL's raging. Usually my dad would take me and my younger brother to like an Avs game or a Nuggets game or something like that. I mean, it's the best. You get to stay up late, get to eat a bunch of junk food. If you grew up as a sports fan, like March, December, they're just some epic times to really lock in. And what's awesome about Game Time is they're making that process to make those memories easier than ever. They've got this awesome curation feature called Game Time Picks. What it does, filters out all the fluff. Game Time has an insane variety of tickets that they offer. Honestly, that can be a little bit overwhelming at times. That's why they added this curation feature. If you're in a hurry, you don't have to sort through thousands of different tickets. This is just going to show you the best of the best value for your buck. And that is what Game Time is all about. You get all-in pricing. You're not going to get hit with 8 million fees at the end, which I personally love. At the lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find tickets for cheaper in the same section and same row. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download that app, create an account, use the code DNVR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem that code DNVR for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. I'm with you, Jacob. I do need some gin and juice. Hoping I get to be at that bowl in person, trying to figure that all out this week, but we'll certainly be talking about the bowl a ton here over the next couple of weeks. I kind of wanted to see what happened with the portal situation for both CSU and Miami of Ohio. I know they've had a couple of pass catchers enter this week. Something to monitor. I think their most significant players will probably be in that matchup. They got a 6-year quarterback, a linebacker. A lot of these guys are playing in their final collegiate game. I don't see them sitting out. But we shall see. You never know. I want to start here. I want to play a video of Jay Norvell answering my question about what characteristics he's looking for in a defensive coordinator. There's a lot of layers to this answer, so I encourage you to really listen in because he kind of hits on a couple of different things here that really, if you read between the lines, illustrate what I have been talking about for a couple weeks now, or really a couple months. Which is that this was kind of a long time coming. There was clearly a disconnect between Jay Norvell and Freddie Banks. I don't think they got along very well, both personally or professionally, over the second half of Freddie's tenure here. And I'm going to give some thoughts on that. But here is a video of Jay Norvell answering my question on what characteristics he's looking for in the next defensive coordinator for the CSU Rams. What characteristics are you looking for in your defensive coordinator?
It's pretty simple, really. I want a kick-ass defense, I want kick-ass players, and I want a kick-ass coach. That simple. And, as a head coach, I'm not going to rent out areas of my team to coaches. And, it's not the special teams coaches' special teams. It's not the defensive coaches' defense. It's the Ram defense. And it's the Ram special teams. And it's the Ram offense. And I'm the head coach. And so I'm ultimately responsible for what we do and how we do it. And I'm looking for somebody that understands that. And but it's really simple what I want. I want to be aggressive. And, I had a good friend explain it to me like this. He said, Jay, you want a defense that looks like you. You want an offense that looks like you. You want special teams that looks like you. So, if we were going to a Christmas party and I showed up in a purple leisure suit, you would look at me and go, like, that doesn't look like Jay. Jay doesn't dress like that. You know what I mean? And when they watch our football team, I want them to see my fingerprints and footprints on how we play. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's more important to me than, is it an even front or an odd front or all that. I want to make things hard for people schematically. I want the quarterback to have a long day when he plays us. And I want to play aggressive pass coverage. And I want to run and hit. And so that's my personality. That's what I believe in football should look like. And, when I took this job here at Colorado State, I want people to see great energy on the field. I want to see players with grit and toughness that plays unselfishly for one another, and a team that never quits. And so that was the goal coming here. And so that's what I'm looking for.
All right. Like I said, a lot of layers to that question. Jay dropped some all-time bars in this press conference. If I went to the party and I'm wearing a purple leisure suit, you're going to say that doesn't look like Jay. Incredible line. Love that. It's pretty clear, though, and he didn't hold back there after already in the intro when he confirmed that they had made a change at defensive coordinator, and he doubled down on how all of the changes that they had made offensively were in part due to, wanting to run the ball more and take advantage of the talent they had in the backfield, but more so to have the defense be on the field less. I mean, he said it 2 or 3 times now and been pretty on the nose there with his answers. Like, basically, we didn't trust the defense, so we had to play this way offensively. But I just thought a lot of things that he said there were really interesting, and I appreciate that he was honest about it, that he didn't get coy, that, when you say things like, I'm looking for a defensive coordinator who understands I'm not going to rent out parts of my team, and that as the head coach, I am responsible for every element of this team, not exactly holding back there. Talked about wanting to be more aggressive in pass coverage. And I think when you look at the end here, as good as CSU was with limiting the damage defensively this year against some of the teams in league play, at the end of the year against Fresno State, against Utah State, really got torched through the air. And to me, the beginning of the end with their relationship, and this is speculation, I want to make that clear. This is speculation based on a lot of context clues. Like, I certainly have plenty of information that backs this up, but I think their relationship really started to come apart with that 2023 Utah State game when the Rams went up 17-0. They ultimately ended up blowing it. You got to remember, this was after they had already blown the game in Boulder. It was the 5th game of the season. It was the 3rd time in 5 games that the defense gave up more than 40 points. And I think both coaches, to be honest, at that point, were kind of looking at the other side and feeling frustrated and feeling like the other was to blame. And fair or not, because I think both of them have some validity with their criticism, but fair or not, it was Freddie's defense that was on the field during a couple of those key spots and a couple of significant losses last year. It started in Boulder. Even in that Utah Tech win, they won, but they gave up a ton of yardage. They go to Logan, they blow that game in the conference opener. They respond with the Boise State comeback, but then you blow 2 more very winnable games in UNLV and Hawaii, in which the offense goes down, scores late, puts you in position to have an opportunity to win. And in both of those games, the defense allows, the opposing offense to go straight down the field, kick a game-winning field goal, game over. And you end up missing out on the postseason by 1 game in a 5-7 finish in a really heartbreaking way. And that Hawaii game was just such a gut punch. You wait up all night for it, or you wait up all day for it. Super late night game. You have to stream it on your freaking tablet and phones because playing Hawaii is a pain in the ass. You lose that way. And, coming into this season, I just don't think the relationship ever recovered. I'm not sure how much those two talk this year. I'm sure some, but I personally felt like the not renting out elements of my defense to coaches and looking for a defensive coordinator that understands that, I think that was all you really needed to hear when it comes to why make this decision. You can't have your top 2 coaches not be, you can't have your top 2 coaches not be on the same page. It's just not how you build a winning program. They were able to make it work well enough this year. You had a lot of veterans on the team, so I think it made sense to not bring in a new defensive coordinator for this year when you had so many seniors. A lot of these guys had already played for multiple DCs. I get just riding it out this season, but moving forward, you're hoping to elevate off of what you did this year. This is supposed to be the baseline for the success that you are able to have as a program. Win 8 games, be in the mix for a conference title, beating rivals. It was a great step in the right direction, but you now want to build off of that and take it to the next level. And I just don't think that's possible if you have a disconnect as significant as there was between Norvell and Banks. I think statistically speaking, the defense bailed the offense out a couple of these games. I think that's fair to say. I think Freddie Banks will very likely land on his feet. But I do think that this was inevitable. I think it was necessary based on the lack of common ground that there was there. They just did not seem to get along. And I'm really not surprised in the end. I mean, I think I said 6 weeks ago that I expected there to be a new defensive coordinator, regardless of whether Freddie got poached or what ultimately ended up happening, which was Jay Norvell electing to dismiss him and move on. I understand there's an argument that the defense was probably the stronger of the two phases this year. But I do wonder if you bring in a new defensive coordinator, if you play a little bit more aggressive in pass coverage, if Jay Norvell trusts that defensive coordinator, do we maybe see the offense open up a little bit? I don't think you're going to go back to the full Nevada-style air raid. I really do think they found something here with the physical identity, but I do wonder if you stretch the field a little bit more vertically, if you open it up, if you're a little bit more aggressive, if you trust your defensive coordinator. It's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic kind of plays out. I'll be curious to see how they call the game in the bowl. You know, how aggressive are you on both sides of the ball? It's a really interesting time, but this is a really important hire for Norvell's success. I mean, at this point, you've now gotten rid of the defensive coordinator. As of now, you don't have an offensive coordinator. Maybe that would be his next move if there was going to be any type of change. But at this point, you know, like you've kind of gotten rid of your scapegoat. I don't think that's the right term. I'm not trying to say it that way, but you know, like it's going to come down to him at this point. So what happens moving forward, we shall see. But I do feel like this was inevitable. Aaron says Norvell and Banks by positions needed to be in a symbiotic relationship. It was parasitic this year as the defense bailed out the offense this year. And I mean, that was kind of the problem for every year, right? Like I think that was a factor in the relationship, was that the offense and defense were never seemingly balling out at the same time. The defense really carried the team in 2022. Now, some of that had to do with the amount of skill players that they lost to the portal. You know, a lot of those receivers quitting in September, that put them in an awful spot. The offensive line was a struggle. The defense outperformed them, and they were really the reason that they were competitive on some of those league games in 2022. Now, in 2023, that kind of flipped. The offense was great after they switched from Millen to BFN. At least it was explosive. They still turned the ball over far too much. They were far too erratic. I've talked about all this ad nauseum. We don't have to make these same rants here again, but you know, this year it then flipped again, and it felt like the defense kind of carried them. And I just think eventually that can cause issues. I mean, we've seen it in the NFL. Like, you can win games that way for short periods of time, but eventually the resentment builds up. I think back to the Broncos defense. You know, it was one thing when they won the Super Bowl in 2015, but that defense really carried them. The Denver Broncos, I should say, you know, really carried them in 2016, like 2017, 2018, and the offense was just inept. And eventually, you know, it causes rifts in the locker room. And I think that was very astutely put by my man, Aaron. You know, you need a symbiotic relationship, and by the end, it was just parasitic. My guy spitting bars in the Toyota chat. All right. We're going to talk about some of the other comments from Norvell now. We're going to talk about how he went viral for kind of taking some shots at agents, for pointing out how the grass is not always greener in the transfer portal. If you followed me, I think I've made it pretty clear by now how I feel about this whole system. I think it is idiotic having essentially what is your free agency period take place simultaneously in the postseason. There's just no logic to that. I know Lane Kiffin ranted about that this week. He's spot on. Anytime the coaches complain about it, they're mocked by the general public, because if you have any critiques of the transfer portal, you're vilified, you're deemed anti-player in this entire process. And I don't think that's the case for a lot of us. I think even those of us that are frustrated by all of this understand that for years and years, coaches had all the power. Coaches were able to act selfishly, and players were kind of in a really difficult position. I don't think you should have to make a decision at 17 years old, get there, find out you don't like it, and then be stuck there for 4 years. I don't believe that. I think players should have the ability to move. I think you should be able to transfer once freely in your undergrad without being penalized for it. If you then graduate and you still have eligibility, you should be able to move again. If your coach leaves like they have in place now, that should give you the option to leave. But what we have right now, which is essentially every single player being a free agent every single 6 months, it's not good for the health of the sport. It's not good for a lot of these individuals. More than half of them don't even end up finding a new home. Players, in some cases, walk away from scholarships. They leave credits on the table, so they're less likely to graduate in the end. Like, there are a lot of issues with this current system, and anytime you bring them up, you're vilified by the mass majority who have decided we are so pro player now that you're not able to add in any of this important context. According to John Canzano, there's over 3,000 players, or there's about 3,000 players in the portal right now. There aren't enough spots for that many guys. There just aren't. There's a lot of predatory people in college football. I'm not saying that all agents are bad guys. They're not. I know I've been very critical of them publicly the last week. I don't think I'm getting any Christmas cards from agents anytime soon. But a lot of these guys, they are predatory. You know, they're taking 20% in commission, which is just criminal. I understand they're going to get a larger cut than in the NFL, which is capped at 3%, because 3% of an NFL contract, that's a lot more money than what they're getting out of these deals with college players. But 20% is just ridiculous. There are all these people who are able to make false promises because there's no oversight from the NCAA. There's no regulation here. They can't enforce their own rules. I mean, imagine if you could just tamper in the NFL and there was nothing that would happen from it. There's so much wrong with this current system. And I think Jay is to a point where he's just been like, fuck it. I'm going to say how I really feel. I'm with him on a lot of these complaints. I understand that for a long time, coaches had all the power. And again, you know, I do support players' rights to transfer. But the reality is the grass is not always greener for a lot of these players. And some of them find that out the hard way, whether that be they go somewhere where they're promised a bunch of money that never comes true. That happens a ton. Whether it be you're promised a spot at some program from an agent who convinces you to transfer, then it doesn't end up happening. I mean, Lewis Brown thought he was going to go to USC. He ends up at San Diego State. He's there for a year. Now he's back in the portal. Grady Kelly, you know, his reps went in half this year after being CSU's #1 defensive tackle. TJ Crandall was a rotational DB for West Virginia. He would have been our #1 corner. He's already in the portal again. I just think there's a lot of short-sighted decisions, and Jay Norvell gave some insight on that. So here is him talking about both the role of the GM and how it will help him with this process, how they'll kind of try and educate the players of the potential pitfalls of this portal. That's not to say it can't work out for everyone. You know, Tanner Arkin's balling at Illinois right now. Ty McCullough, Dante Wright, I think both of those guys benefited from a change of scenery. Melquan Stovall, you know, he's making plays for ASU. But for a lot of these guys, it just really doesn't work out. But here is Norvell talking about the role of the GM and the potential pitfalls of the portal and how it has not worked out for some of these guys that have ultimately moved on.
GM, how much does this relieve the duties you need to do and allow you just coach? Is that accurate if I say that? Is that
Yeah.
how you do that stuff and not worry about some of the minutiae?
I don't want to talk about money with players. Do not want to do it. And, you know, and I think that's part of it. But yes, yeah, it will relieve some things from my plate that I have to deal with. But also, you know, we're moving into an area of this NIL that we haven't been a part of before really much. And there are some schools that have a lot of experience going through it. And I think we can benefit from their experiences. And so, you know, we're moving to the Pac-12. We're taking our program to another level. And so that's important that we have people that have experienced those things and can help us navigate through these new waters.
And hopefully this person can tell the pros and cons, and tell your kids or whoever that this is how it goes, this is how it might be? Is that part of the role?
Well, he can help educate our players too, because the one thing about the portal and I think it's difficult for fans. It's difficult for coaches and players that have never been through it. Really difficult for fans on the outside watching it. But sometimes when you bring in people from other programs that have been going through things, they can bring those experiences to you and really help explain what's going on and help the players understand. One of the things that's going on right now is that the big schools are throwing money at players at our level to be backups. We had 4 players leave our program last year. They all went to bigger schools. They all went to different schools, and all of them played less. And they all want to go to the NFL. And if you want to go to the NFL, playing less is not good, okay? And so, and it's unfortunate, but we show our players those things, and some of them understand it, and some of them don't, And whenever you have 114 people that you're responsible for, everybody's going to have different levels of understanding, and it's unfortunate. Some of these kids are making the same mistakes over and over and over again. And no matter what you tell them, it's just not going to change their minds. And so...
All right, we've got some comments here in the Toyota chat that I think are fair. Brian McCoy says, kids don't have anything, will probably be happy with 100K. And that's very valid. And I think that's important to bring up, is that for some players, their highest earning capacity from a football standpoint is going to come at this level. They're trying to cash in on that. And if that is their mentality, all the power to them. I think that makes a ton of sense. An important distinction here is, are you trying to make it to the NFL? And the guys that I am referencing, Lewis Brown, Justice Ross Simmons, who very publicly cited it's about the NFL, not NIL, with his reasoning to go to Syracuse, and then caught 9 passes in 9 games. That's not how you get to the NFL. And you have to decide, what do you want out of this? David Roddy on the hoop side could have chased a check after his sophomore year. He wouldn't have been a first-round pick in the NBA, though, where he ultimately made more money. That's a tough balance. And in every individual, there is context with their decision that is unique to them. You can paint with a broad brush here, but it's not necessarily going to apply for everybody. And I want that to be clear. And again, I'm not anti-transfer. I think some of these guys, it's what's best for them in the end. And there's a whole variety of reasons why they might be moving. My criticism is more of this system in place as a whole. Everybody being a free agent every 6 months. It's a dumb way to go about things. Having the portal be open throughout the college, like right before the college football playoff, like that doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not against these guys having an opportunity to do what they feel is best for them. But if your goal really is to get to the next level, if it's to, get to the NFL or the NBA, there are so many examples of why it benefits you to stay at a program that allows you to play often and early, that gives you an opportunity to develop. I mean, look at Josh Allen at Wyoming. Look at Shaq Barrett. And I understand that Shaq technically was a transfer from Nebraska, Omaha, but that's because his program got folded. But I mean, if Shaq transfers before his senior year and goes somewhere else as a grad student, does he end up having the NFL career that he has today? I don't know. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But the grass is just not always greener on the other side. And more than anything, I don't think it's about kids leaving that Norvell is frustrated. I think it's the process with which this happens. And it's, again, coming back to agents luring people in the portal. There not being any oversight. There's no accountability. You can throw out false offers. If these guys are actually making 6 figures to transfer, all the power to them. The problem is a lot of these kids don't end up getting paid a dime. There's just, there's so many factors in play, and that's why it kind of comes up. Got some more comments here in the Toyota chat. Here's an old man screaming at the TV comment. What is the graduation rate for transfers as compared to players that stick around? That might be the true downside of the current system, without a doubt. It significantly impacts players. I don't have the stats on hand. I've read about it a bunch of times. a lot of these guys sacrifice at times more than half of their credits to transfer because they won't apply. You know, what program they were in here might not necessarily apply at their next destination. And, you know, I think the whole student athlete thing was used as a crutch for years and years to not allow the players to have any power. But the reality is most student athletes are going to work everyday jobs. They're not going to be pro players. And I think just completely dismissing the fact that so many of these guys aren't going to graduate in the end. On top of that, because they leave, not only are you not graduating, but you don't have that base to come back to. You know, you don't have the alumni support. You know, you kind of lose your identity. Like, there's just a lot of reasons why this can go wrong for kids. Now it can certainly work out for some, you know, and I just think we've lost the point here, and we flipped so far in one direction so quickly that we have just created a completely unsustainable system that will do wrong by far more than it does right for. And honestly, I wonder if like this could be the downfall of college sports in the end, because at some point you strip away so much of what we fell in love with in the first place that you can't even recognize the sport anymore. You know, half these teams are in conferences that you can't name. Like the fact that Stanford and Cal are in the ACC, just absurd. The fact that the original Pac-12 got ripped up so that USC could go 500 in the Big Ten. Like, there is so much change that has made this game borderline unrecognizable. And I understand that some of it is just about what needed to change, what needed to be modernized. The players certainly deserved more power than they had back in the day. But I'll be interested to see how all this plays out. I guess that's my thought here. I got a question from my guy, Aaron. Now for the heavy question, is J Mike going to make it to Arizona? Being honest with you guys, I don't know yet. I don't know. I hope so. That's ultimately not my call, but I hope so. All right, before we get out of here, give some thoughts on the Mountain West. Keep your questions and comments rolling in. I'll get to as many as I can. I just wanted to briefly, if you missed it, sounds like UNLV is hiring Dan Mullen, former Florida coach. That's a really nice hire for them. You know, UNLV, if the casino moguls ever decide that they want to be invested in the program, that's a sleeping giant. I truly do believe that. That's why I was very frustrated by their decision to not come to the Pac-12, as it just felt like a short-term cash grab and not necessarily thinking about what could be built under the right circumstances there. Aaron says, who can we lobby to get you there? That it's the boss's call, guys. Like that's what it comes down to. I used to do a lot of traveling out of pocket when I was an independent journalist, and you know, I just can't do it anymore. I can't justify it. I'm, you know, saving up trying to buy a house. Like, it's just, it is what it is. I would love to be there. I think I'll get to be there, but we shall see. Barry Odom left UNLV for Purdue, obviously got a $6 million salary. That's a big time pay jump, like 3 times what you're going to make in the Pac-12. Utah State steals Bronco Mendenhall from New Mexico. Tough break for the Lobos, who have lost their entire staff. Now all their best players are in the portal. My guess is Wysong follows them to Utah State. If you missed it, Dampier actually going to Utah, where he'll be reunited with his OC, Jason Eck. Fresno State hired Matt Entz, who was formerly the North Dakota State coach. He was the USC linebackers coach the last couple of years. I thought they might go after Kirby Moore, who was their OC there for a while under DeBoer. He ended up, it looks like he's going to get the New Mexico gig in the end, which I think is a pretty good hire for New Mexico. But yeah, that's kind of all the news we have there. The interconference transfers are always a dynamic to follow. A lot of these guys that are portaling, they're posting about getting offers from teams in the same league, which is a unique thing that we have now in the game today. Yeah, a lot of people in the Toyota chat saying Snoop wants to meet J Mike. I don't know if that's true. I want to meet Snoop, though. I certainly do. I think this is a really cool bowl, by the way. Before we get out of here, that's going to be kind of my last thought, is that I was talking with my buddy, Nick, and he said that the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl has an opportunity to become what the Pop-Tart Bowl has kind of become for the Power 4 schools. It's not the playoff. It's not a New Year's Bowl like back in the day. It doesn't have that kind of juice. But I think there's some national interest there. I think it's a fun, unique experience for the players of all the places that they could have ended up. I think the Arizona Bowl is about as good of an option as there is. I think those that get to go are going to have a blast. Nothing would be cooler than seeing Snoop, celebrating with the Rams or something like that. But I'm really excited, and I think this is a big opportunity for the program. I hope that there are plenty of Ram fans there, that they're supporting CSU. Bowl trips are definitely a blast. Some of the most fun experiences I've had in media have come on bowl trips. Same with like NCAA tournament, the Mountain West tournament, all that stuff. Like that's what it's all about. A lot happening. Shout out to all you that have been rocking with us all morning. You guys make my dreams come true. Always proud to be y'all. Much love. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.